Azmoun is heading to Spain to play in La Liga for Sevilla. Is this the right or wrong transfer? Let's talk about it. As confirmed by multiple outlets, Sardar Azmoun will be joining Sevilla on a season-long loan with an option to buy. It was confirmed a couple weeks ago that Roma were not going to activate Bayer Leverkusen's buyout clause and buy him on a permanent deal. It's unfortunate that Azmoun wasn't able to make things work with Leverkusen last season because we all know what happened with Leverkusen this season. They were absolute record breakers, went undefeated in the Bundesliga, won the DFB Pokal, and as well made it to Europa League final. And in my opinion, he definitely would have thrived with Leverkusen if he stuck around and was going to be that main guy for him in this amazing campaign under Xabi Alonso. But instead, I was blinded by my clouded judgment, thinking that the move for him to go to Roma was a good idea. And honestly, this video just kind of makes me look like a little bit of an idiot. But it happens. In the end, the loan to Roma wasn't what we hoped for Azmoun, but luckily for him, there was plenty of teams that were interested in still signing him. From Fulham to Lyon to Borussia Dortmund to Fenerbahce to Sevilla, which is the club that he has landed on going to. The deal is just a loan with an option to buy, which is a little bit surprising for me because based off of the reports that I did see, it seemed Leverkusen just wanted to get Azmoun off their books completely, just flat out sell him, try to see how much of their money they can recoup from their initial transfer when they bought him from Zenit. So I thought with whatever deal was struck up for him to leave Leverkusen, it would be a straight up transfer or a loan with a obligation to buy, which isn't the case in this deal. But maybe when more information comes out, things will change. So when it comes to talking about his move to Sevilla, I just wanted to do a pros and cons list for this video, as I think it's the best way to kind of rationalize and talk about the transfer, as there are a good amount of pros and as well there's a good amount of cons. So I'll get started with the cons and then we'll finish off with the pros so we can end off today's video with a little bit more of an upbeat note. So when getting started with the cons, the first big one is Sevilla just aren't the big team that they once were. They almost got relegated last season, finishing in 14th place. The club is going through a lot of financial turmoil, so we can't expect a lot of outgoing transfers for them to balance out the books with a lot of incoming transfers that are really cheap, kind of similar to Azmoun's deal where it's just a loan with an option to buy, not many obligations to buy, as the club is trying to fix their financial situation. Thus, their squad is not gonna be that good next season when you compare it to Sevilla teams in the past, winning countless Europa League titles. Then adding on to that, with all the issues that the club endured last season, there might be that added pressure from fans for this club to do better, then for these new incoming transfers to do well, hit the ground running, help revive this club. And with Azmoun being their marquee forward signing, their talisman next season, fans probably will have the expectation for him to play well and score goals for them. And if he doesn't do that early on, fans might get on his back. But for the main and final point, Azmoun might not be the main guy, their starting striker next season. There's a good chance that he's gonna have to prove himself, as Sevilla have a lot of forwards on their book, and the main one being Moroccan forward En Nasseri, who was their absolute talisman, probably their best player last season, the big bright spot for them. But as well, there's a very good chance he's probably going to be leaving next season, as there are a lot of reports that he's most likely going to be sold. But if he does stay, it's going to be a lot more tougher for Azmoun to break into this team, and he's going to have to prove himself a lot more to get significant minutes at this club. But now let's move on to the pros, as I think there are slightly more compared to the cons, which is a good thing for this transfer. And as well, I want to talk about the silver lining. The first and big one being he's staying in a top 5 league in Europe. Like how I mentioned in that previous video with his transfer to Roma, if things go well for him in La Liga, it could inspire more Iranian players to make the move to Spain, and as well brings attention to Iranian football, and maybe more Spanish clubs will want to sign more Iranian players. Azmoun will be the third Iranian to play in La Liga, as previously there's only 2 other players that have played in this league, and you guys probably know who they are. They were Iranian icon midfielders Javad Nekunam and Masoud Shojai, who played for Osasuna and made themselves club legends for the team. And that's the type of impact I'm hoping Azmoun has at Sevilla. You know how I mentioned there might be some added pressure from the fans for players like Azmoun to do well for this club this season, as they didn't do well last season, On the other hand, with how bad they were last season, expectations could be low as well. Many fans, players, other teams might undermine Sevilla now for how bad they were last season, for all the off the field issues that are going on. So if Azmoun can play to his capabilities that we all know as Iranian national team fans have seen him do, this transfer becomes a low risk and very high reward if things go well. For the next one, Sevilla did just hire a new head coach, which is Francisco Pimienta. He has a strong Barcelona background coaching the development teams and is looking to move on from the old heads and build a new team and style of play in his vision. And I'm not sure if this is necessarily a pro, but there will be a clean slate for all of the players, which include Azmoun. And I'm assuming since he is the new head coach, Azmoun is a new signing. He wanted to bring in the door based off of his style of play and what he wants to bring in to Sevilla and how he wants to see this team play next season. One thing I do want to add when it comes to talking about Pimienta, when I did a little bit of research of how he lined up his teams for Las Palmas, which was the team he was coaching last season, he does normally play with one striker up top, which makes things a little bit more difficult for Azmoun to get more opportunities if he's not the main guy, kind of like the situations with Leverkusen and Roma. But that is something that I did want to mention when it comes to talking about his tactics from last season in La Liga. And then for the final and main one, Azmoun has a clean slate, a fresh start with a new club. All Iranians have had high expectations for Azmoun since he bursted onto the scene in Russia, scoring loads of goals, winning titles, individual trophies. And when he finally got his big break with going to a top 5 league in Europe, it started well, but some of the common themes of recent years is injuries keep hindering his potential. The reality is injuries ruined his bright moments with Bayer Leverkusen and with Roma. So hopefully with a proper off season and rest, he will not be that susceptible to injury this season. Making this transfer happen early on in the transfer window was like the first big plus when it comes to this move. That means he'll be a part of the team's preseason right from the get-go, because I think one thing that really killed his transfer at Roma was he made the move so late. Like there was already 2 or 3 games played in Leverkusen season and in Roma season, so he had to be ready from the get-go. When he signed for Roma, wasn't a part of their preseason. He wasn't necessarily adapted to the type of tactics and what Mourinho wanted to put out and this and that. When a player gets to be a part of a group for months before the season starts, he's more fit to what they want to play with their system, has an understanding with the managers, his teammates. These are just all small things that can add up for Azmoun to have a good season. And with him going to another new league, we want him to get acclimated as soon as possible. But it's not like Azmoun hasn't scored big goals against big teams in La Liga in Spain. But to wrap up today's video with my final thoughts, the silver lining with this transfer, I think it's most important for Azmoun to get this deal done ASAP. As I said, it is already confirmed, but in regards to getting to Spain, getting with that Sevilla team as soon as their preseason starts, don't delay the transfer any more than it needs to be a part of the team's preseason right from the get-go, and just finally stay healthy for more than 85% of a season. The number one thing you can do as a professional athlete, player, whatever you may be, to give yourself the best chance of success, of being able to score, is being healthy for a duration of an entire season. Because one of the best traits you can have is availability, which, as I mentioned, was his biggest issue at Bayer Leverkusen and Roma. He would hit good form for either team. Alonso or De Rossi would praise him, saying this guy could be our main guy for this team, which is all good. That's what we want to hear. But then he gets hurt, loses the momentum that he built, and then just loses his spot because he's not available. And in European football, there's so many competitions you play in, and then when you miss 3, 5, 10 games, you're just kind of losing your spot in the team. It can all happen with a quick little snap of the fingers. So as long as he stays healthy and adapts to the system that Pimienta wants to put out with Sevilla next season, he will flourish. I'm not worried about Azmoun's goal scoring, assisting ability on the field, because at Bayer Leverkusen and Roma, he was able to do those things in a top league in Europe. That's not the biggest thing that all us Iranian fans want to see from him in this transfer. It's for him to stay healthy and finally become a main guy for a top team in Europe, consistently starting day in, day out, like what Mehdi Taremi was for Porto, not including this season. And Father Time is undefeated. He's not that young spring chicken that he once was in the Russian league. He's now 29 years old. This could be his last chance, his final stand with a team in Europe, so he's gotta make it count. Because if he doesn't do well with Sevilla, what club in the top 5 leagues will want to sign a guy that has flopped with 3 consecutive European teams? But boys and girls, that's gonna be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it, but I wanted to let you all know that I'll be ramping up content this summer on the channel. I know things have kind of been dry since the Asian Cup, but we're gonna be talking about a whole lot of stuff on the channel, from Iranian player transfers, World Cup qualification, just all things surrounding the Iranian national team. So hold me accountable for consistent uploads. The next video I am planning to do is talking about Mehdi Taremi's transfer to Inter Milan. That's already gotten the "here we go" Fabrizio Romano stamp of approval. So that's the next intended video on the channel. But boys and girls, I hope y'all have a lovely day.